Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest is Dan Fletcher, Chief Financial Officer of Planful. Welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Glad to be here and happy Friday.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you on. I know that you've got a long, illustrious, well, I wouldn't say long, but long is a relative term. I've got the gray hair, you don't. But career in working with startups. You want to tell us a little bit about Planful, what it is that the organization does?
Yeah, I love talking about Planful. So Planful is financial performance management for the entire company. When I say financial performance management, that's all things planning, analysis, reporting, financial data aggregation and massaging, all of that good stuff. And we started, as you might expect, where most planning occurs in finance and accounting, and then radiated outward, where we're now in 7 departments across marketing and sales and IT and operations.
And so does your tool allow people to, it's the analytics, or is it the aggregation and cross-pollination, if you will, across the organization for understanding, or is it a tool that's predominantly used at the C-suite? Give us some insight into all those.
Yeah. I think the key word for Planful is comprehensive. So everything you said is true about Planful, but let me offer a bit more detail, right? So Planful brings in the data from disparate sources. You may have your CRM like Salesforce. You will have your ERP like NetSuite, and you will have Gainsight for customer success, and you'll have operational systems and in ERP and inventory systems. And Planful brings all that data in an automated fashion and allows you to do planning and reporting and analysis off of it. So that takes many different flavors. But of course, the one thing that you said that's absolutely true is it involves people from all the enterprise. So from the analysts who are just getting started, who might be involved in generating some of those reports, all the way up to the board, who is the final receiver of board level reporting.
And would all these people have seats or access, or is it that obviously from the company's perspective, the more seats the better, right? But or is it the type of stuff that somebody internal to the company can generate and then provide, whether it's exporting it or however that works. So
we're very flexible.
And
It kind of mirrors your process, right? Now we may help influence your process toward a more what I call democratic approach, where many people are in the system with different privileges and views, of course, but you can also run a very centralized process and just distribute reports. We have automated batching of reports and distribution via email, Slack, you choose it, right? I guess what I will say about your seats question is probably most common is to have the entire sort of planning folks with hands on the keyboard in the system. So whether it's biz ops people and marketing and sales, but certainly the FP&A team and the accounting team, they will all have seats. And then as you scale up, it might taper off a little bit. Certain execs might find more utility in the dashboards, and some execs may say, listen, you put it in my inbox and I'll look at it, but I'm not logging into a system. Really depends on the person.
So really tremendous flexibility in terms of how people use it, and to your point, if you don't want to get dirty in the data, you can just get a report pushed out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I always recommend the more people you get into the system, and it's not just because there's a per seat fee, right? The more people you get in the system, the higher the financial IQ of the entire business tends to be.
So Dan, let's transition, because one of the things we're about at Radio Entrepreneurs is educating and passing along experiences to people. You're the Chief Financial Officer of this company. It's a fast growth company. This is not your first rodeo, so to speak. Tell us about some of the things that you've experienced in your role and in working with and being a part of the team on a fast growth company, and some of the insights that perhaps you can provide from the seat that you sit in.
I think
things to look out for, experiences, all of those types of things.
It's a fun question, Jonathan. I think you hear this a lot, so I won't be the first person telling your audience that always being open to learning new things and hungry for new knowledge is really, I think, a key ingredient if you want to get to a place where you're in a company like mine, which is rapidly evolving, changing, opening new markets, introducing new products. And why I say that's important is you will never know everything you need to know to solve the problems that will be presented in front of you. And so you have to be wide open to challenging, to challenging new frontiers and tackling new experiences, new questions, new problems, and being comfortable with being a little bit out in over your depth and knowing when to pull in resources or consult chat GPT or consult an advisor or consultant or a mentor.
Fantastic. I mean, I think great advice to irrespective. What are your have you seen over the last handful of years? And I know we've lived through an interesting time, but we're to say the least. But we're in an environment of near full employment. I mean, depending on who you ask. I'm sure that you guys are challenged like a lot of organizations, finding talent, the right talent for the right roles. What do you see as some of the challenges of fast growth companies today? And as technology is evolving as quickly as it is, how do you maintain separating out what's valid for us to adopt, what's not? Those types of challenges that the speed of which things are happening is just it's uncanny. It just seems to accelerate and accelerate. So sitting in somebody like your seat where I'm sure you're always deconstructing or analyzing value propositions and investments and things of that nature on behalf of the company. What do you see as some of the things that have come up and challenges over the last couple of years for you?
Well, you are hitting the nail on the head when you say we've lived through an interesting time. If you think about it, we sat in ZIRP or zero interest rate environment in 2019, and it was growthy, and the things we complained about at that time had more to do with tight labor market and the war for talent and politics and all that. And then 2020 came along, and we had our tragic global pandemic, COVID, and just as we seemed to be getting out of the woods there and had some brief boom times, certainly in the markets, then supply chain issues started to come home to roost. And if you had a physical product, it was a very terrible time, right? Trying to fill inventory orders and trying to unwind that complicated supply chain with all the port closures and everything. And then, we started to get out of the woods there, and interest rates started to spike. And of course, interest rates then precipitated a regional banking crisis. And so it's been one thing after another, right? And I don't mean to smile and laugh about it, because certainly there was a lot of pain involved in that journey for a lot of people, a lot of companies. But you are hitting the nail on the head that that's a unique time. If you just look across, even the last 100 years, having sort of a rolling wave of mini crises and macro crises like that is a little bit unique. And what it has made me realize, and we were already doing this being a planning company, but is that planning at the atomic unit, or understanding what truly drives the performance in your business. That may be inventory turnover. It may be something in SaaS along the lines of utilization of your platform and customer adoption and daily logins and things that are way upstream, right? The leading indicators is more essential than ever, because you can then track those and sort of, it's no crystal ball, but sort of understand where we're headed. For example, if we had been looking at those in late 2022, we would have absolutely seen some turmoil, at least in the software industry, in terms of people preparing to dial back their usage. And where we sit now, knock on wood, and I don't have a crystal ball, it's a little bit less intimidating out there. I think there's a lot more optimism, and I think it's warranted. So it's a long-winded answer by way of saying we have had a lot of turmoil, and being prepared for it means planning for it at the atomic level, being able to pull in the drivers of your business.
And I think as a lot of people have said, perhaps this is the new normal, that we're going to see change. We're going to see the rapid fire. Things will come quickly. I think one thing that COVID has taught us is plan for the unplanned and be prepared to pivot. The other thing that I would say is we're starting to see a little bit of shakeout, I think, with some of the large tech companies, perhaps paring back their workforces, which may open up opportunities for smaller startup companies. A lot of talent. Large companies are not unsmart. You're going to use the dumb word, but not unsmart. I mean, I'm sure that if they're paring back talent, they're trying to maintain their best talent. But it should open up the marketplace for some of the downstream companies to attract talent. but I wonder how deep this trend goes. I think people are cautious to call it a correction. Maybe companies staffed up when the pickings were lean, and now they're right sizing. But look, these cycles, as long as we don't see a massive shift, I think we're going to be healthy. So any thoughts there? Are you starting to see? I know you're California based. Is your company based in Northern California?
Yes, in the Bay Area, in
Bay
San
Area.
Francisco.
So are you starting to see, where some of the larger companies are right sizing, that are opening up opportunities for some of the smaller companies to think about, do we want to attract talent at this point, since there may be a shift?
I do think the labor market in the Bay Area, and certainly in software in general, has loosened a little bit. Now, keep in mind, it was at an all-time high. I mean, you had people getting double, triple their salary if they threatened to leave, right? And so those days appear to be a little bit past us, and that is reflected in the layoffs. That to me, Jonathan, is a whole different podcast where we talk about macroeconomic policy and money supply and valuations and who gets rewarded for what financial profile. But I think, put simply, profit is cool again, and the big companies are certainly being rewarded in the markets for showing some operational leverage and operational efficiency. And there is no question, you're correct, that means a lower cost profile, and therefore more talent is being released into the market, and that will benefit the earlier stage companies that simply couldn't afford to hire that level of talent. So you're spot on in that analysis. I think. Of course, we're doing the Cliff's Notes here. This is, we don't have Larry Summers on the Radio Entrepreneurs studio with us to help us out with this one.
No, absolutely. Well, from where you sit, really, as a CFO in an operating company, a fast growth company, it's really interesting to get your perspective and to offer that out. As you said, it's not your first rodeo, and you've had some experiences. So really appreciate you sharing it today with the Radio Entrepreneurs audience. Dan Fletcher, CFO of Planful. If people want to get in touch, learn more about either you or what Planful does, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Well, find us at planful.com. Drop a little note into the chat bot there, and we'll get you connected to a human very, very quickly. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Dan Fletcher. I'm the only Dan Fletcher at Planful, and so it shouldn't be that hard to find. And love to hear from your audience. And thanks again, Jonathan, for having me. It's been a fun conversation.
Excellent. Dan Fletcher, CFO of Planful. Appreciate you coming on Radio Entrepreneurs, and we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.